Welcome to the latest episode of the B Movie Club. I'm your host, Kevin. This week we're going to be discussing the 1980 comedy classic Airplane, written and directed by the Zucker brothers and Jim Abrams, who went on to do the Naked Gun movies, later Hot Shots, and shockingly enough, Ghost. Yeah, there you go. For those of you guys just joining us for the first time, thank you very much for logging in or clicking or subscribing or whatever it was you did. I actually went online and I found out in the last 30 days I've had viewers from Malta, Malaysia, India, Turkey, Germany, Great Britain, Canada, all over the place, right? So for those people, Guten Abend, Konnichiwa, Namaste, and good day. Anyway, this week, Airplane. The plot is this. Ted Stryker is a former Air Force pilot who, in his last military campaign, there was a big issue. He choked under the pressure, and a lot of his people he worked with, a lot of the other pilots bit the dust because he couldn't take it. Now, years later, his girlfriend's dumping him, and he's got to get her back. So she's a stewardess. So she goes and gets on board the airplane, and he follows her aboard, and they take off. But there's been a problem in that plane. Evidently, the fish that they're serving the passengers is rotten, or it has salmonella, or there's something, botulism. I don't know what the deal is. So the pilot, the co-pilot, and the navigator are all taken out. And the only one left who could possibly fly this plane is Ted Stryker. But he's got that pressure. He doesn't know if he can take it. So there you have it. In a nutshell, that's Airplane. There's a lot going on. There's a little girl there who is flying to have an operation of some indeterminate type. There's a singing nun. It's really a funny movie. If you haven't seen it, you need to run out and watch it. It is actually it was one of the first movies that was kind of a parody. It was actually a direct parody of a 1958 movie called 0 Hour. And in many ways, the scripts, they actually went and bought the script, the rights to the script, and basically the plot for Airplane is from that movie 0 Hour, but it's also like an homage to the airport movies of the 70s. For those of you guys who don't remember, in the 70s there were a lot of disaster films. There was all the airport movies, Airport 75, Airport 77. There was Earthquake, Towering Inferno, The Poseidon Adventure, which really wasn't much of an adventure, truth be told. So they were kind of making fun of those types of movies. Originally, Jim Abrams and the Zucker brothers, they opened a theater, and it was kind of a Saturday Night Live, Second City type of theater, where they did a lot of comedy skits and things like that. They were able to parlay that success into a movie that came out a few years before Airplane called the Kentucky Fried Movie. And it had kind of like funny little skits and like fake commercials and fake TV shows. And originally Airplane was supposed to be the sequel to Kentucky Fried Movie. Like it was going to be, this is the Late Show, Airplane, and they were going to have fake commercials. And they showed it to John Landis, the famous director, and he just basically said, forget all that other stuff, just focus on this. So they wrote the script, again, basically a scene-by-scene remake of this movie 0 Hour. And when it came time to cast, they didn't want to hire like comedians or comedic actors. They actually went out and found actors that were known for being very serious actors. For the doctor on the plane, Dr. Rumack, they found Leslie Nielsen, who obviously is now known for all his Naked Gun movies and things like that. But before Airplane, he was a serious actor. Everything he did was very dramatic. They've got Lloyd Bridges, who was another very serious actor. He actually didn't want to do this movie. He had to be talked into it by his sons, by Jeff and Bo, who basically said, this script is hysterical, you need to do this. Robert Stack, he was on The Untouchables and later went on to do like Unsolved Mysteries and things like that. Another very serious actor. And he was ready to do it. Just like Leslie Nielsen, they were both like, that sounds great, count us in. Peter Graves, who of course was on Mission Impossible in the 60s, was like, no way, I'm not doing this. This script is horrible. And his wife actually had to talk him into it. Again, they found these kind of veteran, dramatic actors to play these parts, and they had them basically play it straight. Like everything that happens, they play it very straight. Rather than being zany and wacky, it was just kind of like, especially Leslie Nielsen, his role as the doctor was literally, his lines were taken from the original 1958 movie, but the lines were so cheesy even back then, so melodramatic, that now, years later, they're funny. I mean, they had like the crazy, the score that really kind of added the over-the-top melodrama, like lightning striking when they'd say like a especially dramatic line. So they went through and they took all of these pieces from these old movies and put them together, added their own wacky little scenes. And if you've seen Airplane, it's been a while, you really need to watch it again, because there's a lot of hidden things. Like the pilot, Peter Graves, Captain Over, is talking to the Mayo Clinic. In the background you see mayonnaise, because it's the Mayo Clinic. Yeah, there you go. Waka waka. There's a lot of scenes like that, where it's like things hidden in the background. There's, again, Captain Over, he's like looking at magazines before he gets on the plane. It's like fiction, passes by, non-fiction, and then it says whacking material. Yeah. I didn't notice that until literally, this time I watched it. You know what I mean? After having seen this movie a million times, that was something I'd never noticed before. So, the characters in the movies, like I said, were taken from these older movies. In the airport movie, there was a singing nun. They took that. There was a little girl who needs to get to the hospital. They took that from that movie. The pilot who can't handle the pressure is now being thrust in this position. That was totally 0 Hour. So there's a lot of these scenes, these flashbacks where he's remembering like what happened in the war. And they'd use like stock footage from like the 30s of planes crashing and things like that. And again, this movie was filmed in like the 1979, 1980. And this footage was like from like World War II or something ridiculous. It's like, what war was he supposed to be fighting in? This guy's like 25 years old. And as while he's on the plane, he keeps like basically sitting next to these people and telling them this story. And each time the people are just like, oh God. And that was basically taken from the writers' lives. Like they had this buddy who would just tell the most long-winded stories. People were just like, oh geez, come on. So they took that in there. And people are kind of rolling their eyes, and then they're like committing Harry-Carry, they're hanging themselves because the stories are so long and boring. Anyway, there's actually two passengers on the plane who are these two African-American guys, and they speak the entire movie in jive with subtitles. And where that came from was the directors and the writers had just seen like Shaft a few years prior, and realized they didn't understand what was being said. Like the slang used in that movie was just over their heads for whatever reason. They were like Midwestern guys from Milwaukee and aren't used to basically that kind of slang, evidently. So they tried to write their own kind of ghetto slang, and they brought these actors in to read it, and the actors were just basically like, okay, we're throwing this script out the window, and we're going to write our own, scene. I mean, they basically took what was supposed to be said, what the subtitles were supposed to say, and took jive and kind of created their own language, because they said it's like jive is not like, you know, a language. It's just kind of, you know, like anything else. It's a little slang here, a little slang there. It's not like every word is some kind of foreign language. So they wrote their own language and put it in there, and it was brilliant. It was like the funniest thing. They were hired on the spot, obviously, and those two actors were friends from way back. And they actually, when Barbara Billingsley comes in and speaks to them, they wrote her lines as well. So, I mean, that was brilliant. If you haven't seen that scene, you got to go check it out. Like I said, this movie basically set the tone for those kind of wacky parody movies that came out throughout the 80s and 90s. It started here. I know that Lloyd Bridges only kind of half got that it was a comedy. There were a lot of scenes where he was just like, I don't know what's going on with this. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be doing here. And at one point, Robert Stack basically pulled him aside and said, you know what, don't even worry about it. We're the joke. Just do your lines. Just do what you're supposed to be doing, and it'll all work out. He had to, like, convince him. And Peter Graves didn't even want to go to the premiere. He was sure this thing was going to be a total disaster. And again, his wife basically made him go, and obviously became a huge hit. Some places you'll see rate this as one of the top comedies in the history of movies. If you haven't seen it, rush out. It is streaming instantly on Netflix. Obviously, you can go to Target or Amazon and get it. It's a must for any video library. Let me tell you, it is 98% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, certified fresh, so you know it's good. Some of the references are a little dated, and by the end of the movie, it's less like Waka Waka and more like, isn't it ironic? You know what I mean? How melodramatic some of these scenes are. When I posted this on Facebook and asked people to send in their favorite quotes, people sent me like a bucket load. I know Kelly sent me, we need to take this kid to the hospital. Hospital? What is it? It's a big building with lots of patients. Or, surely you can't be serious. I am serious. And don't call me Shirley. Another one is, excuse me, stewardess, I speak jive. My totally out of context quote for the movie is this. Looks like I picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue. So there you have it. Thank you for joining us. Next week, we're going into the horror genre, Hellraiser. My sister Tara has been complaining that I have not been picking any movies that she knows anything about. I guess we're not all fans of Buckaroo Banzai, hey? So this was one that she requested, so it is streaming instantly on Netflix. Check it out. Send in your questions and comments on Twitter at KD9575, on my Facebook page, or on my YouTube page. Thank you for joining us, and be well.